Bună ziua, ne aflăm în Ottawa, suntem în fața Parlamentului canadian, ne aflăm aici cu domnul David Kilgour, e un apărător al drepturilor omului pe plan internațional, am putea spune unul dintre cel mai importanți avocați pentru drepturile omului din jurul lumii. Mr. David Kilgour, thank you so much for being here today and for your wonderful speech. Would you mind telling us why you are here today?
Partly because of a guilty conscience. When I was the Minister for Asia Pacific from 2002-2003, I did not do enough to raise the persecution of Falun Gong, both in China and outside of China. And when I stopped being the Minister in 2003, my conscience really bothered me, and that's one of the reasons. And then when I was asked with David Matas to do the study on this persecution of Falun Gong and organ pillaging, then I discovered to my horror that in fact it was going on, and that, as our book says, and you've translated the book, or one of the books, something like 41,000 organs pillaged from people, Falun Gong practitioners, were done between 2001-2006. So 41,500 Falun Gong practitioners, just until 2006, have been killed for their organs, and their organs have been sold to people in China, people in Canada, and possibly people in Romania for huge prices, and it's unacceptable. And we can see from this huge demonstration today that the point is very close now when China is going to have to stop doing this. They're going to be completely disgraced by what continues to happen in their country on this matter.
I know you've been doing a great work going around the world to talk to various parliaments, various members of parliaments about stepping up and speak about the freedom of belief and the human rights issue. Is there something which I believe is very dear to you? Is there something you would like to say for the members of parliaments around the world who didn't have yet a chance to step up and speak about that?
Yeah, do it. Stand up. I guess I've been in probably 50 countries now, and I've met parliamentarians in many of them. And I think members of parliament have a duty to stand up on this issue. It's probably the worst, or one of the worst, human rights abuses that's going on anywhere in the world now. Men and women who have done nothing, they believe in truth, compassion, and forbearance, are being sent to forced labor camps, are working 16 hours a day to make products for export to countries like Canada and Romania. And then, as I said in my speech, when somebody comes from Bucharest or from Ottawa and wants a new liver, the person is a person with matching blood type and is dragged into a lab, and they're killed, and their organs are flown to Shanghai, and the person who's paid perhaps $130,000 or $50,000 gets a new liver and flies back to Bucharest or to Ottawa, and an innocent human being has been killed. To think this is happening in the 21st century is a crime against humanity that must be stopped. And members of parliament in Bucharest or in Budapest or in Ottawa can help stop it. And I have a particular interest in Romania, as you know. I've been there several times. I've spoken to members of parliament in Bucharest, and I know that some of them are concerned, but it takes a few of them from any party. This isn't a partisan issue, that will stand up and will gather like-minded members of parliament together and do a petition or pass a law like we're hoping to do in Canada that makes it a crime to buy a trafficked organ. And that will send a message to China that the Parliament of Romania is not going to stand for this. After what the Romanian people have been through under Ceausescu, I would think it should be a pretty easy thing to get consensus from all the members of Parliament.
Thank you so much for saying that. As you mentioned, you've been to Romania several times, and we are hoping to see you again in Romania.
Ask me, I'd love to come. Romania is a particular interest of mine.
I might ask you to come and to invite your official to come to Romania. Any other words before finishing off the interview?
Yeah, actually the European Parliament has been very good on this, as I mentioned in my speech, and the Social and Economic Affairs Committee has been good. Europe is moving on this. A lot of countries are moving on this, but how about Romania? After what the Romanians have been through for so many years, how about Romania showing a leadership position on this in Europe? Let's please do it for the sake of Romanian people, for the sake of the people, the Falun Gong practitioners in China, for the sake of the world. Please stand up and pass a law that says that nobody in Romania can buy a trafficked organ from anywhere. You don't even have to mention China. Just say it's a crime to buy a trafficked organ anywhere. That's what Israel has done. That's what Canada, I hope, will do. And I think Australia is getting close to doing that too.
Thank you so very much for your kindness. Thank you. We have the privilege to be together with David Matas, who just authored the book, Why Did You Do That? Someone today in the presentation, they named you the guru of the human rights in Canada. How do you feel about that?
Well, I must say that initially I was hesitant to write this book, partly because I feel that what's important is a focus on the issues and not a focus on individuals. But I think sometimes it's useful simply in order to try to mobilize activity. And so what I'm trying to do through the book is to not necessarily get people involved in the causes I'm involved in, although I'd welcome that, is to just try to get people involved in the issue of human rights generally. And so I think by talking about what I'm doing, it may give some people hopefully a push to get involved in some issues that matter to them.
Right. Because my first question to you was, why did you do it?
Well, I've started off by being very much concerned about the Holocaust and what could be done about that, and I tried to draw some lessons from the Holocaust and act on them. And so the lessons I thought I'd learned was the need to combat hate speech, the need to protect refugees, the need to bring mass murderers to justice, and the need to protest international human rights violations no matter where they occur. So I just acted on those 4 lessons in a wide variety of different issues and arenas.
Right. So you've been doing that for your entire life. What made you take this road and stay on it for so long?
My own view is that you've got to stick with it in the long run to get solutions. That human rights violations are not easily remedied. It takes a long effort, and what's more, you're dealing with human nature. You're dealing with a problem that doesn't go away. That if you want to deal with the problem seriously, you have to deal with it indefinitely. That's my view.
So do you see any link between the communism and the human rights?
Well, the answer to that is yes, I do see a link. The chapter on communism, what I look at is the ideology of communism and how the communists ideologically address human rights, and my analysis of the ideology is it's basically antithetical to human rights. I mean, the dictatorship of the proletariat, it's dictatorship. It's not proletariat. The leading role of the Communist Party means that the Communist Party is not subject to the rule of law. It's a law unto itself. The notion that you've got to conform to the duties of society before you get any rights means that you can't. That freedoms don't mean anything. There's this whole ideological package which is central to communism and which is antithetical to human rights. So, I mean, of course, we see lots of human rights violations within communist societies, but in my view, those aren't aberrations. Those are the acting out of communist ideology.
I know you have some Romanian roots, if you like to talk about that.
Sure. Well, my mother's mother came from Romania, from Pietranăuț, and I haven't been to Pietranăuț. I've been to Bucharest, but I mean, I remember my grandmother, and Romanian was her, I guess, her first language, and the food that she would cook would be like a Romanian diet. I remember eating that sort of food when I went to visit them. So I'm glad to see these books are being translated into Romanian. I feel I've got a special connection. Well, I do have a special connection to Romania.
Few final words for the Romanian readers, and how do you like to? What would you like to tell them about the human rights and about the way they should position themselves and to defend the human rights? You basically said in the Bloody Harvest, the idea I'm talking about the fact that the human rights are not locally, they are international, and if we are basically going to treat human rights differently in one area, in one region, it's actually a violation of the human rights. Would you like to speak a little bit about that?
Well, sure. I mean, my experience is that most people are, understandably, are concerned about their immediate surroundings, but there are things happening far, far away that potentially can concern us and should concern us, because the victims of these violations in a country like China may not impact upon us immediately, but if we ignore them, they may well impact upon us eventually. And the reality is we're in a position to do something about it, whereas the people caught up in these countries are not, because of the heavy level of repression. So we should take advantage of the freedom we have and the opportunities we have to try to help people who are in such desperate straits they can't help themselves.
I know the government of Canada is supportive of the work, and there is a new regulation coming about the human, the transplant for the tourism for transplant. Would you like to say something to the Romanian politician? Maybe something they can, maybe they get some inspiration from the Canadian colleagues.
Well, I mean, I think there's room for instance, extraterritorial legislation to deal with transplant tourism and preventing complicity in foreign transplant abuse through criminal laws, through immigration controls, through disclosure of records, through transplant ethics. I mean, there's a lot any country and every country can do. I mean, even if the bulk of the abuse isn't coming from Romania, or the bulk of the transplant tourism isn't coming from Romania, like every country, can do something to say we're not going to be complicit in this, and so I think they should be doing that.